Open the podcast bay doors, Hal.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 175 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. I've been a proud geek all my life, being into role-playing games, board games, sci-fi, fantasy, and especially superheroes and comics. And I want to help others join me in those pursuits, but I found that sometimes people can get overwhelmed or feel left out because they don't already have what some consider the requisite knowledge to be considered a fan. And that's where Welcome to Geektown comes in. Here you can ask your questions without feeling like a gatekeeper is calling you out for not yet being fully versed in every aspect of your new interest. As of next Saturday, March 30th, it will be 6 years since I released the first episode of Welcome to Geektown. I would like to thank all of my listeners for taking the time to support this podcast in any way you can. Whether that be sharing a link on social media, writing in questions, or just being a regular listener. But extra thanks go to my patrons, who help offset the costs of hosting a show, including the web space and domain, new equipment, and other expenses. So my sincerest gratitude as always to the following: Mike Sterling, Justin Bailey, Lily and Sam Breen, Jesse Clark, Ricky Garvin, Rob Garrison, Aaron Woodward, Aaron Borst, Carla Hoffman, Julio Herrera, and Matthew Saint. If you'd like to join this exclusive club, it's just $1 per month, and that gets you a monthly shoutout, audio outtakes, and scripts for every written show. Just go to patreon.com/welcome-to-geektown to sign up. Now, as I mentioned, this is the closest release date to the 6-year anniversary of the show. Regular listeners may recall that I used the first anniversary as an occasion to discuss my favorite superhero, Speedball, aka Robbie Baldwin. And the subsequent anniversaries I've dedicated to going over the other members of the team he has been a mainstay of for most of his publishing life, the New Warriors. If you recall last year's New Warriors episode, the last event recounted was the inciting incident of the Civil War storyline, in which the New Warriors team consisting of Speedball, Night Thrasher, Namorita, and Microbe were caught in an explosion that killed all of them except for Speedball. So this year, I had a choice to make. I could talk about the team that Speedball was a part of next, or I could follow the New Warriors, as the next group to bear that name is the first incarnation of the team that Robbie was never a part of. However, the next team that Robbie was on was when he was in his penance persona. If you go back to that first anniversary show, episode 27, you'll hear that I was not a big fan of this part of his history, as it makes him into a completely different person in both powers and attitude towards life. So, let's look at Volume 4 of The New Warriors. This version of the team has very little connective tissue to any of the previous iterations, but the big one is the team leader, Night Thrasher. I went into Dwayne Taylor's story back in episode 53, but this Night Thrasher isn't Dwayne, but his half-brother, Danielle. Danielle was the product of a one-night stand between Dwayne's father, Daryl, and Danielle's mother, who has not been named yet in the comics. Danielle grew up resenting his well-off half-sibling, as he was never recognized legally as Daryl's son and thus did not share in his father's fortunes. When he was older, Danielle sought to antagonize Dwayne by taking on the codename Bandit and stealing from Dwayne in many ways, including successfully wooing away his girlfriend, Silhouette. Bandit and Night Thrasher fought on and off over the years since his introduction in Night Thrasher number 3. Written by Fabian Nicieza, with art by Ken Lashley and Fred Haynes. But Bandit would also end up leading the team of New Warriors that helped rescue the original team from their time displacement by the Sphinx in New Warriors number 48 through 50. Eventually, the two repaired their relationship, and so when Dwayne died in Stamford, Danielle decided to take on the Night Thrasher persona and form another team of New Warriors. With the exception of Danielle himself, the team was entirely comprised of mutants who had lost their powers from the Scarlet Witch's proclamation of "No more mutants" at the end of the House of M storyline. Team members were recruited with the promise of fighting against the Registration Act that had gone into effect, but Danielle actually had his own mission that he hid from the rest of the team. Secretly, this new Night Thrasher was collecting pieces of technology and magical artifacts that together would allow him to travel back in time and stop the Stamford explosion that had killed Dwayne and his teammates. Instead, the team ended up in an alternate future where Dwayne had returned from the dead, but he became even more pro-registration than Iron Man and used the resources of the Taylor Foundation to become an authoritarian figure as the new Iron Man, while Tony Stark took on the Night Thrasher costume to rebel against Dwayne's rule in this alternate timeline. Danielle was torn for a time, since his goal had been to revive his brother, and that had now happened in this world, but he eventually killed this alternate future Dwayne when he threatened to kill the rest of the team. When they returned to the present, Danielle gave up on his mission to resurrect Dwayne, disbanded the team, but let them keep their costumes. However, as you'll see, most of these characters were not seen again in these New Warriors outfits after the final issue of this 20-issue run. But let's meet the rest of the team. As I mentioned, these New Warriors were recruited from the ranks of depowered mutants, who were then given new abilities via technology. Stolen and reverse engineered from heroes and villains alike whose gear had been confiscated by the currently defunct S.H.I.E.L.D. This means that a few of these New Warriors were actually former X-Men, the most well-known of which is Jubilee. Thanks to her role on the X-Men animated series, and the new X-Men 97 sequel, I'm going to assume that most of you are familiar with her basic story and her mutant pyrotechnic powers. Her codename while on this team was Wondra, and she acted as field leader of the team, being the most experienced of the bunch. She had a pair of Wonder Gauntlets, hence her name, that had originally been invented by Fantastic Four villain The Wizard, which granted her superhuman strength. She was the first recruited by Night Thrasher, who let her and the rest of the team assume that he was a somehow revived Dwayne, and was also in charge of training the team to work together, using a reconstructed Murder World facility as their own danger room. She was the closest of the team to Danielle, despite not knowing his true identity for most of the series run, and even gave him a kiss goodbye on the cheek when the team disbanded. After the 20-issue run of this series, she went back to the X-Men, first as a non-powered ally, then turned into a vampire, but able to control her thirst enough to stay on the side of the heroes, and finally returning to her original status quo thanks to a shard of the Phoenix Force. She has also become the adoptive mother of an orphaned baby boy named Shogo. There are two other former X-Men who I'll get to in more detail as part of my recurring, lesser-known X-Men feature, the most recent of which was just last episode. But as a quick summation for this part of their history, Chamber and Stacy X joined the New Warriors as Decibel and Ripcord, respectively. Decibel's powers were, unsurprisingly, related to sound, and like some other sound-related characters in the Marvel Universe, could use those abilities to not only make offensive blasts, but also fly and create solid sound constructs. Ripcord had coils similar to the Masters of Evil member Constrictor, which she could extend from her wrists up to 30 feet and use as whips. Similar to Jubilee, both characters have returned to their mutant status quo, with Stacy being resurrected by the Krakoan Five since she died in this New Warriors run. Now we get into the characters who, while mutants attending the Xavier Institute, or the Jean Grey School for higher learning, were never made official X-Men. Let's start with the brother-sister pair of Christian and Christine Cord. While it's not stated outright, my assumption is that the pair are fraternal twins, given that their mutant powers manifested at the same time, while attending church. Christian's powers caused him to create a bright flash of light, while his sister's hair fell out and skin changed color. Christian chose the mutant name of Radian, while Christine, who found she could display messages on her skin while also being able to phase like Kitty Pryde, chose the name Tattoo. Tattoo had a brief romantic relationship with a telepath named Slick, but when it was revealed he was using his powers to make people think he looked more attractive than he actually was, she broke up with him. The pair both joined the Omega Gang, led by Quentin Quire, aka Kid Omega, who is another character we'll eventually get to in the lesser-known X-Men series. After the gang started a riot at the school, they were all arrested and sent to jail for their crimes. Sometime after that, they were released, and after losing their powers, were recruited by Night Thrasher to join the team. Christian wore a version of the torpedo armor, though different from the one used by former New Warrior member Turbo, discussed in episode 84, which could blast energy beams from the hands and chest, making it more similar to Iron Man's suit than Turbo's. Christine, on the other hand, went by the codename Longstrike, as she wore an altered version of Stiltman's armor that could extend all of her limbs. Unfortunately, Christine died in an early mission fighting against the team called Zodiac. Danielle hoped his plan to change the timeline by stopping his brother's death would also reverse Christine's death, but since that plan failed, that did not happen. While many mutants were resurrected during the Krakoan Age, there's no concrete evidence that Christine was among them. However, it would be simple enough to say it happened off-panel at some point if a future writer decides that they want to do something with her and or her brother Christian, who has also been in comic book limbo since the book's end in 2009. Another former member of the Omega Gang who joined the New Warriors is Vincent Stewart, who as a mutant went by the name Redneck. Born to a large family in Arkansas, and with the power to burn things through intense heat from his hand, it made a certain amount of sense. The term redneck originally referred to farm workers whose necks would get sunburned from being outside while bent over to pick the crops. Like the Cord siblings, Vincent was also sent to jail, but was apparently done serving his time when recruited into the New Warriors. His suit of armor was similar to one worn by the Beetle, and gave him the ability to fly and shoot some sort of energy beams from his hands, and he chose the new codename Skybolt. Vincent died in the same explosion that killed Stacy X/Ripcord, mentioned earlier. But unlike Stacy, Vincent has not been seen to have been resurrected, so like the Cord siblings, he also waits in comic book limbo. The final three members of the Volume 4 New Warriors, I'm going to wait to tell you about next year, as their stories are much more involved. But to give you a little preview, all three had mutant powers that either gave them wings and or allowed them to fly. Two were regular supporting cast during Grant Morrison's X-Men, even though neither officially joined the team, and the third was a member of the 2003 New Mutants team. So, I'll see you back here in a year to discuss Winddancer, Beak, and Angel, not that one, aka Renaissance, Blackwing, and Tempest. But I'll see you, or at least you'll hear me, in just 2 weeks to cover a brand new topic. What will it be? That's a good question. Speaking of good questions, I'm always open to getting more of those from you. Or you can just let me know what you think of the show in general. You can send any and all of those via email to welcome2geektown, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcome to Geektown, Twitter at Geektown Podcast, Mastodon at welcome to Geektown at mastodon.social, or Blue Sky at welcome2geektown.bluesky.social. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, why not become a patron at patreon.com/welcome to Geektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, audio outtakes, and a monthly shoutout. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show, so we can all tell them, welcome to Geektown, population, us. Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Levitz, logo art by Archie Centena. All other sound clips of the copyrighted material, their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.